Good morning, everyone. I am Amr Said, one of the liaisons at the Family Resource Center, and I am so happy to have you all joining us this morning for Trauma-Informed Care, Safe and Supportive Learning Environments for All webinar. We are excited to have with us this morning Dr. Lisa Pfeiffer, the Trauma-Informed SEL specialist for Fairfax County Public Schools. She is also a nationally certified school psychologist, holding additional certifications in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and youth mental health. She has 20 years of experience serving diverse youth schools populations across multiple states. Dr. Pfeiffer focuses on using SEL practices to enhance resilience among all stakeholders, including students, families, and staff. Dr. Pfeiffer has an extensive list of publications, most notably the CBT Toolbox for Children and Adolescents and the Trauma-Informed Social Emotional Toolbox. Her most rewarding role is at home with her family, husband, Jeffrey, and daughter, Genevieve, and dog, Harp. We also have the pleasure to have with us today Marcella Flomore, a social and emotional learning specialist for Fairfax County Public Schools. She's a dedicated mental health professional who holds a master's degree in social work from Norfolk State University. She possesses a diverse professional background with nearly 3 decades of experience in education and dedicated to fostering equitable and environments. Her expertise lies in supporting diverse youth, removing barriers to students' success, and providing culturally relevant professional development to administrators, central office, teachers, and organizations. When she has time away from her professional role, she enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 sons and partakes daily in physical activity. Please take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning. We have a nice group, and I'm happy to be here with my colleague, Marcella. We're going to share some information and provide a little opportunity for question and answer. So I hope to, share some good background information, some strategies maybe that you'll be able to think about using at home, or even just ideas for questions of how to engage with our schools so that you can learn more and share your thoughts and ideas as well. And just for format, so we'll talk for a while and then we'll open, hit if there's any questions at that time. So we'll kind of scope out the questions, maybe address a few, and at the end, there'll also be time. But if something during this presentation kind of really hits home or connects with your child or children or your students, and maybe it's more professional or personal reflection, we would be happy to connect outside of this more like public setting so that we can address your questions, maybe connect you with school staff that might better be able to answer your questions, or just provide better care for your students. So we're here to listen, and then we'll kind of navigate that at the end of how best to support and keep this work moving forward. So let me get to my right screen here. All right, so this morning's highlights, we're going to talk a bit about stress and the impact of learning when it comes to student behavior and student learning in the classroom. We're going to explore safe and supportive environments. What does that mean in schools? And then share some practical strategies for use at home. So in our classrooms, we support social emotional learning practices, and one of our main practices are called the CASEL Signature 3. And one, it's developing routines in the classroom to build safety and comfort. And this is an example of an inclusive welcome. So sometimes it's a question or an activity, something meant to kind of reflect on the learning ahead. And so today, given the virtual format, I went with a quote, but this one is one of my favorites that I share frequently. So if you want to take a minute, I will read it out loud. This is from Fred Rogers, who was really a pioneer in some social emotional learning, he says that anything that is human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know that we are not alone. And so moving forward, you're going to see a theme about this, but I'm thinking about your own personal experience. Who was your person growing up? Maybe it was a family member. Maybe it was a community member, like a coach, a mentor, or a church member. Was it a sibling? Who was it? An educator that really you connected with, that maybe was that balance or support that kind of helped you either be able to share experiences, um, advocate for help, or even just like enjoy things together and feeling like you're connected or part of a group or a team. And with that quote in mind, I also offer a visual. Um, Here we have the same hill and two sets of the same picture. So when we're thinking about life's challenges, having a connection with someone by our side kind of changes everything. While it's the same hill, that connection can offer a buffer. I mean, it doesn't like magically take away obstacles, but it can help lessen the impact. Um, so a person can support, provide encouragement, and kind of help share that stress. So when we might have an overwhelming climb alone, now it feels more manageable, more hopeful. Um, and with this idea, and when we're thinking about trauma and its impact, our individual journeys are tough enough. They're very personal. They're different from one person to a next. Um, but when we experience significant stress, that hill could be very challenging. It's the same in both pictures, but there are those different hurdles that impact us along the way. So it's that connection within our community that can really help buffer against the elements of adversity. And so just keep these images in mind as we go through this morning's webinar, just kind of sharing about, thinking about, we'll share about the hill and how challenging that can be in that impact, but then we'll also balance that with the protective factors like connection or skills that help really help us face adversity and move forward in a positive way. And so with that, I share that today. I share this when um, I have the pleasure of consulting with school teams or central office groups that support schools. And what trauma-informed practices really means is developing a better understanding that behavior is communication. Um, that we're moving from an idea of like, what is wrong with you, to that compassionate question of what happened to you. And while I don't need to know all the specific details of what an individual might encounter, having that idea that we all enter a room with a wide range of experiences that have shaped us, behaviors can be an expression of that. And when I'm coaching with school teams, it's about shifting from reacting. So when a behavior occurs, even though it might feel very like personal or towards you, um, we want to move from being reactive and having that immediate reaction to responding in compassionate ways that are intentional, that have a delayed response, so that we're taking that moment to disconnect that instant feeling from that situation so that we can be more mindful, more compassionate, and better approach a situation so that we are avoiding re-traumatization, that we are being supportive and compassionate in our interactions. And we're really looking at that long-term solution. Whereas when we're reacting, we're trying to get immediate relief. When we're responding, we're trying to enhance safety, rebuild connection, and then eventually kind of problem solve of how we can build stronger skills, stronger awareness to support behavior in the future. All right, so on a Friday, we're going to talk a bit more about stress. Uh, Stress is natural. It is a primal human response that keeps us moving and motivated every day. The stress of an alarm, well, you probably want a 5 more minutes of snooze or sleep. That stress of the alarm kind of gets you up, moving, prepared to tackle the day. But it's our natural response to maintain safety. Stress can be positive. It keeps us scheduled. It keeps us, when you get a little nervous for something, then you prepare so that you're able to kind of present your best self. This is 100% true, particularly thinking about our students in school who have stress of exams or um, things like that. So we study and we prepare so that we're ready to tackle that. But the key difference when it comes to that stress is what is the available support and how long does it last? So not all stress is the same. So I just briefly mentioned positive stress. And while it might not feel positive in the moment, this is that normal everyday stress. So um, you experience, stress driving somewhere, right? That's a familiar experience in the DMV area. You might have, someone cuts in front of you or slams on their brakes. You have instant heart rate increase, that stress hormones increase, and then you respond in a way of like either braking or slowing down, something so that you maintain your safety. And then that stress dissipates and you hopefully just safely get on to your next destination. Tolerable stress, this is temporary but intense stress. That's can be buffered by supportive relationships. Um, then toxic stress is when this is constantly reoccurring and there's not that release. So this is that prolonged experience of stress. So your increased heart rate, stress hormones, all of those things are kind of in that constant state, and safety really feels compromised. And this, when you're in that when someone experiences that toxic stress state, this has that can have that harmful impact on an individual's health and well-being, their connection with others, and even just their outlook um, on the world. That really can be shaped by living in that toxic stress. Few more definitions. So ACEs might be a term you've heard before, or perhaps this is new. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So in the 1990s, Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, ran this big study. They had over 17,000 adult participants. They were looking at, they wanted to better investigate um, the connection between health issues and experiences of trauma, what that impact was on adult health. So this large group of adults answered questions about their early lives and their current health. And what it showed was there was a powerful relationship between number of experiences of adversity. So this could be um, like abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, might be divorce. It could be health of a loved one, physical or psychological health. So those experiences and the number of them, um, the more that they had, the greater risk they were for developing heart disease, drug and alcohol exposure, cancer. There was a variety of significant health impact. Um, and so they showed that the higher the score, the higher the risk. Um, and that just really was a connection or a relationship between poor health, mental health, and social outcomes later in life. However, Just because one experiences childhood adversity does not necessarily mean that there's a significant, it's not 100% mean you have a significant impact, because one can be buffered by a variety of things. So it could be individual traits that you have. It could be your family system. It can be your community system, or an interplay of all three of those that really buffer that risk. But this just really brought awareness that um, in this study, it was 2/3 of the adults reported at least one of these identified adverse childhood experiences. And current research is showing 3 out of 4 students are bringing an experience to the classroom. Now, what is trauma? Trauma is an event or an experience. And the main piece of this is how a person perceives um, and interprets that situation. What is that lasting impact? So what could be traumatic for me might be very different for Marcella or anyone else in this room. The experience alone does not define whether it is traumatic. It's your own interpretation of that impairment. Um, and there's 3 E's of trauma. So what happened? Was it abuse, neglect, witnessing violence? What was the experience? So how did the individual feel, and how did they interpret that event? Was there fear, helplessness, like lack of control in a situation? And the effect, how long did this, what was the impact of the daily life? How close were you to the experience, that proximity? And what was the impact? Is it lack of sleep, behavioral issues, health issues, um, difficulty with anxiety or depression? There could be significant impact from events or ongoing experiences that can really, um, we'll share in the next few slides, really impact that educational uh, experience. So I'm going back to thinking about running from the bear and stress in the brain. So one of the ways to kind of simplify understanding of the stress response that we share with students, maybe in school counseling lessons, or even just when we're talking in health about um, how our brains function. So there are many parts of the brain, but for this demonstration, we share that we have the brainstem, which is our kind of like our wrist and palm area. That's the survival brain that controls breathing, heart rate, sweating, all of that that keeps us um, physically well. Then you have the limbic system, which would be like your thumb on the inside. So this is the emotional brain. And then when you flip your hands over and the fingers go over the thumb, that's the cortex, that's the thinking brain. So everyone right now, all 3 of these areas are working in conjunction. So I'm breathing. I am, I feel safe in my work environment right now. So I'm not really looking for physical signs of danger. I'm engaging my emotional brain, kind of uh, handling maybe feelings of nervousness of speaking to a large group. And then I'm using my thinking brain because I'm talking, I'm planning, I'm thinking about the next slide. So it's all of these 3 things are working together. And our brain does this all day long when we are in a good window of stress. And then another like visual example I like to give is maybe even just thinking about a window, and like on Monday after a nice weekend, your window is wide open. And when you have different stressors or your day doesn't go as planned, you're able to be a little more flexible, and you're like, okay, I can adjust, I can go back. I'll try this, but I can stay regulated, and all 3 of those areas are working together. Um, and then by Friday, after all the emails hit or plans change and you got a flat tire and you have all of these stressors, then you might get outside of that window. And when you get outside of that window, your lid can flip, and it's a normal experience. And that's when like the emotional and the survival brain take place. and have a stronger impact, where stress can really um, kind of take its toll. Um, so it's normal to have that flip lid for a moment while we're trying to navigate a stressor. But what happens for individuals that are experiencing um, lots of stress, that toxic stress, or even traumatic experiences? They are living, um, a lot of their time and energy are spent in that emotional or survival brain because they're focused on safety, because they may not be safe in that moment, or they might have a perception that things are not safe in that moment. So when we feel safe, um, this is optimal learning, right? So if we're thinking about students in the classroom, when we're safe, I'm regulating emotions. So if someone bumps into my desk, I can kind of shake it off and I'm fine. I can work in a small group. I can kind of work collaboratively with someone on a project. I can take feedback on a paragraph that I wrote. Um, and I can make decisions. So I can think about different ways to solve a problem and what those outcomes might be, and kind of weigh which one I want, which path I want to take. And this kind of uh, this regulation kind of moves kind of at a, like um, a wavy line, not, you're not just calm and still. You're kind of noticing what you need in the moment. So if I've been seated for a while and I'm still regulated, I might get up, I might move around, but I'm still focused. I'm still able to kind of really be engaged in the thinking brain. But when stress threatens that safety and that lid is flipped, the amygdala, which is the thumb right in that limbic system, takes over, and there is an immediate, I don't feel safe. And if I don't feel safe, this is just a very uh, short summary of what behaviors you might see, but you might get into that fight. So this might be aggression. This might be calling out, being defiant. Flight might be just like being tense, restless, disengaged, trying to avoid situations or leave, um, or even kind of freezing. You could be shutting down. You could be, wanting to like hide yourself, like go under a desk or a chair so no one can see you. Um, Zoning out or numb, that might look like someone doesn't care in that moment, but really they're just kind of frozen, waiting for that stress to subside so that they're able to um, figure out what they need to feel safe. Or there could be like fawn behaviors, where this could be overly people pleasing, constantly seeking approval, unsure of themselves, or avoiding conflict. And while all of these could be normal and natural, like when you're outside of that window of stress, yes, 100% of the time, I'm thinking about interactions even with um, in my own life. So if I were stressed and overly stressed because I had a lot of things happening, or, whatever the situation was, I could say something loud that I don't mean, or completely avoid a problem because I'm frozen. I don't know what to do and I don't want to deal with it. So those are normal. It's just how long do you stay in that? And kind of thinking about some of these behaviors, maybe that you've seen, um, if you've worked in a school, or you're thinking about family behaviors or even extended family members, is there a behavior that might look like defiance, but really that one of those behaviors might be a sign of not feeling safe or dysregulated? So what can flip a lid? Sometimes it's hard to figure that out. Um, Having unmet basic needs. So if I didn't get enough sleep, if I'm hungry, and hungry might be because I didn't like what I had for breakfast, or maybe I didn't have enough for breakfast, or maybe breakfast wasn't available. Um, Feeling disconnected from others. Um, Growing up is challenging. Navigating social circles, whether it's in elementary, middle school, or high school, or thinking about post-secondary. Um, Relationships can be difficult to navigate. And even and particularly if our students might have a disability that might impact some of that social connection, um, that can be really challenging. Uh, Feeling unsafe or vulnerable, not having control. Uh, if a child had experienced adversity in some way, sometimes there's just such a lack of control because you're little, you don't, adults make a lot of choices. And so when I'm in that situation, um, and I feel like you've taken control from me, particularly in a classroom, I might flip my lid. Um, Having a mistake pointed out, kind of feeling that embarrassment. Um, and also, sometimes we also talk about the after school collapse. At school, a child might be able to keep it all together. It takes every ounce of energy to stay focused, to follow the rules, to handle all the transitions, to do the work, to engage with peers. So that's 8-ish hours of doing that. And when they come home, they collapse. They're inside still the same wonderful, loving kid, but on the outside, they might have that emotional release because they're so exhausted, because they've spent so much time trying to keep it all together at school. So at home, then it could look like refusal for demands, like if you're asking them to engage in chores or do normal evening routines, they might withdraw. Or for our little ones, there might be a lot of clinginess or even irritability over little things. So there's a wide variety of things that can flip a lid. Uh, some behaviors in younger kids, there might be the physical experience. So there might be headaches or stomach aches without an illness to attach to it. Sometimes our little ones like go to the nurse frequently. One, because we do have some really amazing nurses, but they might be experiencing some of the call the like somatic feelings. So it's it's like that physical experience, but it's not because they have migraines. It's because they're stressed, and so their body responds with a headache or a stomach ache. There might be difficulty in relationships, uh, and even having that trust with teachers or with other students, um, or other adults that might be working with kids in the school setting. Little ones might have some regression, whether it's regression with sleep, toilet training, eating, might throw tantrums because of the lack of well, the self-awareness skills that might not be fully developed at that time. Um, and then our older students might have similar behaviors, but thinking of that kind of teenage perspective, uh, there could be academic gaps, not because of uh, not because of like intellectual ability, but perhaps the adversity or experiences caused gaps, and caused them from being away from school. So they missed important things, important skills. If they are in that stressed state while at school, they might physically be there, but they might not be able to kind of take in and process the new content, and connect it with prior learning. For some, there's also that need for perfection, that I need to be someone else, that I need to be spotless, and that can cause a lot of stress as well. But then you might also see that either the withdraw or being defiant when it comes to relationships, and difficulty with trust. And for some of our older students, risky behaviors also becomes a worry because it might be risky behaviors might be like um, drinking or using substances, maybe to ease symptoms or even to escape. So kind of really be aware and supporting our students and building skills of positive coping skills to help them through those periods of stress. So I share all of that to connect that protective factors can help outweigh all of the risk factors that we've um, just mentioned. So protective factors can be individual skills, our family relationships, supportive teachers. It could be engaged in a sport or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or something where or a church group or something within the community where I find connection and support. This kind of goes back to thinking about that hill of who do you have helping you navigate these journeys. Um, Here I have pictured, I snagged one of the uh, helpful summary of 3 to Succeed, which comes from the work of our Fairfax County Youth Survey. Students in grades 6, 8, 10, and 12 take an anonymous survey, and it's given every year to those who select to take it. And it looks at risk factors that impact our youth locally, but it also hits at protective factors. And year after year, we see that students need 3 to succeed. So if you have exposure to 3 protective factors, this better helps manage stress, helps make better choices, and helps develop better health habits. And that also then kind of shadows what we saw, you know, opposite of the ACE study, right? So the more adversity, the more at risk, the more protective factors, the greater the buffer and support. So that fairfaxcounty.gov/youth survey, you can find out more if you're curious. But overall, some of the major protective factors, having parents and guardians who are able to help, participating in after school activities, um, having adults in the community to talk to, accepting responsibility for their own actions. So those are some of those social emotional skills, and we'll share that coming up here if we talk a little bit more about social emotional learning. And having teachers who like recognize and praise good effort. Just having teachers that and educators that recognize students in the classroom. So recognizing those who are, getting all A's, and also noticing every kid independent of their grade, recognizing the value that each student brings into the classroom. So we can take a moment and I'll look at the Q&A. Right. So we have one question in here. So it says, are school counselors train teachers and other staff on neurodiversity and adverse effects of some of the teaching strategies on students with disabilities? Who takes care of the most vulnerable kids in our school, and the younger ones and the ones who can't communicate their stress? Absolutely, that is a really powerful question. So our school counselors, our school social workers, and our school psychologists, I think are some of our pioneers in the schools that help kind of bring that trauma-informed lens, so that when they're doing consultation with teachers, when they're talking about a student might be having a difficulty, kind of broadening that lens of what might be impacting that student, and breaking it down to, does the student need a different way of learning some social emotional skills, of like being able to understand and communicate in a way that works for them in the classroom, and what can the teacher do, or what can the staff or the aides support, like the entire school team do to better to connect and understand the students. And we do also have neurodiversity specialist within our county who's doing some amazing work of really broadening the awareness and better, like a better shift towards inclusive practices where we're kind of um, valuing all students' identities and how they support our the talents that they bring to the classroom, and finding ways that you can't just teach a lesson one way. And I think our educators are doing a really great job of um, kind of embracing this push and really finding ways to better engage our students. Okay, so thank you for that. So now we're gonna, that was actually a great question to shift us on to thinking about. Gotta make sure I'm clicking on the right thing. Sorry about that. Okay. Excuse me. So at the core, when we're thinking about trauma-informed practices through the lens of the school, we are working to build protective factors by creating safe and supportive environments, by taking intentional efforts to build caring relationships from teacher to student, colleague to colleague, school to families, back and forth like that. So all of the layers of relationships, and then also developing the social emotional skills of our students. When we think about safe environments, we think about the physical sense of the environment, and then also that psychological, like, do I feel safe? Do I feel accepted in this space? So the physical environment is very important. It's not necessarily about having all the posters and all of the things, but that when I walk in that space, it's organized, it's accessible, so I can move around, I can adjust to my needs, whether um, I am a learner that likes to stand and move around, because sometimes I am that, and sometimes I like to be seated in different ways. Or if I have like equipment that I need to be able to move through that room, I need to be able to move through that room just like any other peer. Um, that we have clear, predictable routines. I say with visuals here, but also that they're explained to students. So the more predictable we are in an environment, the less time I have to worry about, will there be a change? Will this be safe? I know what's coming up. Even if I don't like it, I know that it's coming up, so it doesn't catch me by surprise. And then our schools are taking a lot of um, efforts to build in and kind of normalize self-regulation practices. So this might be having a little calming area in the classroom. So if I feel stressed or I need a little break, there are like routines and expectations in the classroom where the student can use that space, use a breathing skill, or just take a few minutes to collect themselves. And students respect each other in that area. And our educators are um, helping teach a lot of different skills, and even maybe prompting the use of some of the breathing techniques, or just even naming emotions that you might be feeling during the day before a challenging academic task. Uh, on our website, the public website, there is some information about self-regulation spaces if you're interested. I chose these three pictures, one not to overwhelm with all the pictures, but this kind of gives a wide, like like a balcony view of what might be seen at some of our schools. So on the left-hand side, a tiny little nook. Uh, this school uses um, a curriculum called Zones of Regulation. So it's like a different way of talking about emotions. So there's a visual there to help kind of remind and reinforce that language. There's a little coloring activity on the wall. So I can take a few minutes, color a few pieces, and then return to class. And then there's also some other tools that um, have been introduced and it's available. And there's also looks like a beanbag chair there. So a student might just be able to sit for a minute or two, take a break, and come back. The middle piece, one of our schools has kind of an alternative lunch space. So on certain days, they offer the Calm Cafe, and it's for any student. Because sometimes we know that the lunchrooms can be a really loud, um, sensorily overloaded experience. Kids are kind of let loose for a minute because they've been working all day, but it can also be just really overwhelming to anyone. So in this space, it was just a separate room that was near the main cafeteria, but it was they had adults there to supervise, and there were opportunities for students to engage, whether it was just even the seating or some quiet games. So they're still having that engagement, but just kind of in a calmer setting. And then the third space is an actual regulation space that a school team did a really nice job. They won a grant and were able to kind of buy a few um, tools for this, but this is um, like a lab space where kids learn different ways that they can kind of regulate and bring awareness to their feelings. And it's kind of carved into a particular time where they're able to use it. But it's always by choice, it's always proactive, it's never a consequence. It's just trying to help build healthy opportunities to regulate stress. I'm thinking about the second area of caring relationships and trust. There are many things that go on in a school building, and each school kind of does it a little differently based on their staff and their community and just really what has worked. We have a lot of amazing um, principals and counselors and educators that are really um, building caring and supportive relationships. One of the ways that we do it is through morning meeting or responsive advisory. So it's basically like a soft opening to the day. One, it's routine, so kids know what to expect. There's the same segments every day. Uh, it's that like a welcoming question. There's an opportunity to share. There's usually a kind of like a fun, simple activity, whether it helps wake up the brain or helps connect with the day's learning. Um, and so morning meetings for the elementary version, and then responsive advisory is that middle school and high school approach that is, more developmentally set to the needs of our older students, but still provides that time for reflection and connection, um, which tie into those routines and expectations. And then we take time to really explore the connections in our class. So it, uh, depending on schools that we're working with, sometimes we ask like, all right, write down your roster of students, right? Done. All right. I wrote all 20 of my students' names. Now think about one thing outside of school that you know about them. Doesn't have, could be they play sport or they like the color blue. It doesn't matter. Just something that you know that's personal about them. And sometimes we'll find that there might be one or two like uh students we don't know much about. We might know something academically about them. And the idea is not to know every little detail about one, but it's to build that connection between our staff and our students that show it's to get to that academic success um, that we want for all of our students. You have to feel like you're connected and part of a caring community. So one strategy that we offer is for teachers to engage with our students, one or two students, 2 times a day for 10 consecutive days, just having a good conversation. It doesn't have to be academically focused, just to kind of build that rapport and that understanding. And that pre-work really kind of helps then when we're challenging, or when we're facing more challenges later in the year, when it's more stressful, when we have difficult conversations, we can have that because we spent the time building those relationships. And then that last piece of that apple core is the heart of the work of teaching and modeling social and emotional learning skills. So learning happens in many ways. We have classrooms delivering specific lessons, whether it's like what is stress, or that brain, the hand model of the brain that I shared, or a variety of decision-making skills. Learning also happens when our adults model the skills and strategies, whether it's our adults at home, whether it's our adults leading the classroom, or our administrators in the hallway. They are constantly modeling skills, and kids are looking up to the adults leading that charge. And then it's one thing to learn a lesson, but if we don't provide an opportunity for the kids to apply it, there can be that disconnect. So really finding intentional ways to integrate those skills during the day. So if you're like, what are these skills? You might have seen this wheel before, and if not, welcome to CASEL's Wheel of Social Emotional Learning. There are 5 components, and it's not necessarily you have to memorize any of these, but knowing that this is kind of that undercurrent of intentional skills that need to be developed and are developed across a lifetime in order for us to successfully engage in the world. It helps us manage our emotions. It helps us set goals. Helps us use those executive function skills so that I can plan, I can organize my time, and I can attack a goal. Feel and show empathy for others, maintain positive, healthy relationships, and then making caring decisions. So, in the classroom, we do that through lessons and things, but you can see all of these skills are also necessary for the adult world, whether you're interacting with other adults, or you're handling work problems, or if you're managing a family household. All of these pieces of social emotional learning play a part in how you get, engaged in the work and make positive connections. Well, so thinking about, I'm going to draw your attention to self-management for the next few slides. That's one of those orange skills at the top. Self-management really connects to managing our emotions, identifying like our different experiences, whether like when I say experiences, I mean like stress state versus calm state, and then taking that emotion regulation and then applying it to those executive functions. So the goal setting, the planning, the time on task, organization, all of those. This image is something I'm frequently sharing with our school teams. Because this applies to work, this applies to real life, that the idea of co-regulation or being together with someone. So, my goal is not to make someone regulate, but to help identify when we are dysregulated so that we can approach situations with intentional, we're taking that pause and we're getting to a better place to be able to identify what the issue is and maybe problem solve from there. Excuse me. So when their storm meets our calm, co-regulation occurs. And as you look at this image, the water's never flat, and that's okay, because we're always on the go. We're constantly regulating. We're constantly taking in information. We're constantly handling little obstacles along the way. So how do we kind of ride that together? And a regulated adult is the key to the safe learning environment, because our nervous systems are all interconnected. So with that, this is an activity that, one, it's a quote that we share with educators, and it's also an activity that applies both to thinking about myself, my parent lens, and my educator lens. We want to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. The thermostat is the steady. Um, while it's easy sometimes in a situation because it feels personal, or it really kind of, flips your lid and you want to rise, yelling at yelling really doesn't help a situation. I know that, thinking about a teenager at home, uh, it's taking that pause, and as simple as this is, um, this exercise we offer this to, well, let me explain it first, and then I'll give another example. So first, it's to stop. So freeze in that immediate movement or action. Breathe. So we want to take that slow, single, deep breath, and then remind yourself that this is a stress response, not defiance. So it could be any little mantra like that. It could be the thermostat, be the thermostat, and then choose a calm, low tone, supportive response. Because taking a 5-second break between what happened and your response can make all the difference. So I say that in coaching our educators, but also, um, when, um, if you're having an interaction with your spouse, or you're having an interaction with your child, even, or going to work, and you want to say something that's on your mind, and you know that taking that pause is really going to make the difference. Um, so we encourage our adults to model. That's an example of modeling. But then we teach skills to our students. So we teach awareness, but we also, teach skills. And I'm going to just provide two examples. Maybe you've seen these before, maybe you haven't, but we picked these intentionally because they don't require you to have any extra tools, right? So finger breathing uh, is helpful because you can always use it on your hand, and you can do it discreetly, so no one even knows that you're doing it. So this might be something I do while I'm waiting at a doctor's office because I'm, a little nervous about going in for an appointment or a meeting. Um, and it's the rhythmic piece of it and that kind of mindfulness, that present connection to the breath that can help reduce the feelings of stress in the moment. So with this, you raise your hand and you just trace it. So as you trace up the thumb, you breathe in, and you trace down the thumb, you breathe out. So you could do it along your fingers. You could just go up and down the palm of your hand, but it's just something easy on the go, that we like. We introduce to our students. So then, when a challenge does occur, we have a toolbox and a common language of sharing how to do some of these. And then the second one is a grounding activity, which is something just help a quick distraction. Um, think of it as it could be as simple as a game of I Spy, or you can even, this example engages your senses. So it's, while you're, waiting for something, this is a great activity. Um, 5 things that you see. So in my room, I see, um, my computer screen, I see my mouse, I see a picture of my family, my water bottle, and some gum. 4 things that I feel my space heater, which I'm thankful for. I feel a cold draft from a window, um, my seat, and my cord. Things that I hear, my heater, I hear a bird, um, and maybe humming from a larger heater. And so you get the gist, but it's just something kind of to distract you, and help you kind of connect quickly to the present, and it doesn't require any physical tools. So, I am going to shift and introduce Marcella again, and she's going to share a little bit about families as resilience builders.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Lisa, there is another question in the chat. And I don't know if you want me to briefly connect with it. It says sometimes the ones who need help the most are unable or not aware enough to ask for help themselves. Does FCPS have any procedures built in to help these populations? And I saw the question as you were reflecting on the slide about responsive advisory meeting, morning meeting, 2x10s, and caring relationships. And so through SEL, social and emotional learning, some of the activities, lessons, and strategies that we're providing for schools hopefully will help teachers and students connect and build relationships so that teachers are more aware of the situations that students are dealing with and facing prior to incidents occurring. So then they can already be putting the accommodations or supports in place that that student might need if something happens. Would you like to add to that, Lisa?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think um, developing that connection or that awareness. So when um, perhaps a student's not able to um, uh, oh, sorry, might not be able to like verbalize their emotions in that moment for what a variety of reasons. Um, when we have a better understanding of what our engaged state or that calm state is versus the stress state, and our teachers are able to kind of um, connect with that, then that usually school teams have particular plans to help individual students or different ways of teaching those pre-skills and from that SEL lens. And then I see one more. Yes. So I shared those exercises as a lot of our work focuses on what we call tier one, which is kind of the proactive, the universal strategies that are good for all. So we're kind of building that language. But in significant high level stress events, um, a grounding exercise might be very challenging, but we would have a variety, I would hope, for students that might be experiencing significant stress, that the school team would have a plan to support an individual's safety, or collect information so that they're able to work with you as the family of what what tools are helpful, particularly if there's outside clinical involvement. So it's that understanding of like what can we do within the educational setting, um, but also how do we best support the safety of the student. So that collaboration is needed for more significant stress. But yes, that makes sense. So would you like to proceed, Marcella?
Okay, thank you. So I had a great opportunity of discussing the importance of partnership and looking at families as resilience builders. So families are our children's first teachers. And when we say that, we're thinking about back to that castle wheel. So if you think about a toddler and a baby and social awareness skills, a toddler will calm a crying baby. The toddler doesn't realize that they are using social awareness skills, but skills of empathy, caring, concern are being taught within a household. Other skills with relationship building, decision making, self awareness, those things are being taught in the household before a child or student even steps into the building. It's important that educators and families work together. And in some of the ways to do that is by families making sure that they share strategies and they communicate consistently and stay connected. Students receive the support that's needed to strengthen SEL skills throughout the year when when teachers and families stay connected and work together, which all benefits the students. All right, so this is examples of SEL skills within the home. This will shows these examples and the practices that can be reinforced at home, naming emotions, problem solving, understanding perspectives of others, communicating clearly, and managing stress. Even small everyday moments play a game, like playing a game, cooking together, talking in the car, all build on these skills. Thinking about how this might look in a family, I often, with my own children, and when they were younger, we would play games in the car. If they were upset about something, we would talk through what was going on, and just trying to refocus their minds to something else during that time really helps to reduce some of that stress that they may be dealing with at that moment. So when might be a good time to reach out? General school questions that you can ask are shared here. But if you think about specific times, we know that life is not linear. So we don't expect students' lives to be the same every day. As adults, our lives change on a regular basis. So we don't expect that from students either. And because of that, if there is something in particular that may be a change for a student, that is a good time to reach out. So when we think about those changes, it might be that they got in bed late the night before because of some specific event that they may have had to attend. It might be that there's a change in the family dynamics. It may be something that you're curious about that may have occurred in school or about something specific about your student. It also may not be a big reason, but sometimes it is. And we do encourage you to connect with school personnel so that they are aware that something's going on and that your student may need additional support on that day, or to just simply keep an eye out for them. You don't always have to share every specific detail of what's going on. If something is challenging, you can also just give a general heads up. When we observe those behaviors at home and we're curious about how it might look at school, consider inviting two-way communication.
Sorry, hold on. Not sure what happened. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second. So I'm not sure what. Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
sorry about that.
All right, examples of two-way communication. So this slide includes examples of questions families can ask teachers to better understand a child's experience at school. Communication is most effective when it's two-way, sharing observations and asking for insights. So when your student is overwhelmed, what does that look like? When my child is frustrated in your class, so you are asking the teacher, what does that look like to the teacher? And you all can figure out if this aligns with what you're seeing at home, or are you seeing something different at home? If you're looking, you can think about when social connection, does my child initiate play or join groups, or are they doing solo play? Does my child interact with others in a class or choose to stay isolated? So these are things we can have communication with teachers. And in elementary school, you're mainly focusing on connecting with the primary teacher. In high school or middle school, it may be a little more complicated because you are dealing with several teachers, but connecting with teachers or the counselor as your point of contact may be beneficial with that two-way communication, and that counselor can then connect with the teachers to find out more information for you or share your concerns. Communication is definitely most effective when it's two-way. And as I shared before, sharing observations and asking for insight. Who can you reach out to advocate for your child? The classroom teacher, school counselor, school psychologist, and school social worker. They are all there to support you and your student and help your student through whatever needs they are experiencing. Earlier, Lisa, or when we first started, Lisa mentioned CASEL's SEL3 signature practices. Those practices that are those are the practices that are woven into the day. An intentional close is the third piece of the SEL3. And this is an example. I used to think my child's trauma or defiance were simply them trying to push my button or get their way. Now I think my child's difficult behavior is often a sign of their brain being overwhelmed and them needing help to regulate their stress. So an intentional close can just be a reflection on the learning and the progress you made throughout that learning. It can also be a way to identify next steps or to just think about how you can connect what you've learned to the future. So these examples are, this is how I thought about trauma or defiance initially, but now that I've completed this training or I've learned more information about how the brain really processes trauma and reactions, I feel or I think this way. We have provided resources for you to dive into on your own time. FCPS public websites for social and emotional learning, and Fairfax County Trauma Informed Community Network.
Yeah, that Fairfax County Trauma Informed Community Network, also called TICIN, is a great community collaboration. They also welcome families, but it's school also connecting with social service agencies across Fairfax County to make sure that our practices meet the needs of our students and our families. And it's a great spot to learn, but it's also a great spot to make connections and share your own expertise as well as families. And there's a whole variety of books and reading. I just added two to this list. But if you're looking for more, I'd be happy to share other things with you. And I think I'll get the screens working at some point. Yep. Last one. If you have other questions after today, I can be reached at lwpfeiffer@fcps.edu, and Marcella can be reached at myfullmore@fcps.edu. We're happy to connect, listen, and hopefully help connect you with your school. And then I see just one last question in the Q&A, and I'm happy to touch upon that. Is it possible to measure the feeling of safety for specific students? Depending on individual situations, we do have measures that school teams look at. So the social emotional learning screener that's given in the fall and the spring is our greatest source of student voice, because students provide feedback on a variety of questions. And there's not a particular safety question, but there are things that within that screener that kind of give us insight. Do they feel like they have supportive relationships? Are they engaging? Do they have, are they experiencing challenging feelings? So that just could be like a lot of sadness or a lot of stress. Do they feel like they have a sense of belonging? So that kind of can cue us in, as a school team, as a grade level, looking at, what are we doing to support all students? What are we doing to support those that might have more intense needs? And also, are there interventions or ways that we can help to build that awareness, make those connections to further enhance safety? And we did provide just some tools just to give like illustrative examples of a few of the things that some of the skills that our students might learn about, but that is just, it's like a sprinkle on the icing of the cake, that there's a lot more, and it's school by school. So I can't say each school is doing a particular program, which is good because all of our school communities have like different strengths and needs, so that schools are kind of able to tailor that to really support the learning in each of our schools. But if you do have particular questions, we can kind of follow up on that, so you can kind of know more about what's being shared and taught at your student's school.
Well, thank you so much, both, for the valuable information that you shared with us this morning. And we still have some time. If you would like to add some questions to the Q&A, we'll be happy to take those before the end of the session. But I also wanted to share that I have posted in the chat an evaluation link. If you would like to share some of your feedback about the session, if you would like to get some, topics to be discussed in the future, please put that in the evaluation form, and it will be sent as well in the follow-up email with all the resources related. And if you have any questions that may not be answered today for the sake of time, please reach out to the FRC at frc@fcps.edu. We'll be happy to share with you other information as well. And you can look at our library to find books that could be helpful as well with the resources that was shared this morning. So I believe we do not have more questions for today. So that will conclude our session. Thank you so much for all your efforts and the wonderful presentation. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you.